Hello and welcome to Redesign Your Life Today. I'm your host, Daniel Kobryner. I'm a high energy, heart centered life and business coach, international motivational speaker, and passionate believer that transformation is always possible, no matter your age or your story. This podcast is a space for you, especially over 40, who feel stuck, off track, or disconnected from who you truly are. If you've ever thought there has to be more to life than this, you are in the right place. Here, we explore how to break through fear, procrastination, self doubt, and reconnect with your purpose, your power, and your truth. You'll hear inspiring conversations with heart centered guests who have experienced real transformation and who now live with intention, freedom, and alignment. Every episode is an invitation to show up more fully, think more expansively, and take bold, soul aligned steps towards the life you know is waiting for you. And today I'm so happy to welcome a very special guest. It's Mayim Vega. And Mayim is a visionary leader who has transformed her life from being a NASA computer scientist and Silicon Valley digital marketer to becoming a naturopathic herbalist and holistic life coach, public speaker, and author. Her journey took a profound turn after a personal health crisis that modern medicine couldn't resolve. This led her to explore holistic health solutions, eventually healing herself and dedicating her life to helping others to do the same. Mayim's work focuses on holistic wellness, blending scientific reasoning, holistic health practices, and spiritual insights to create a powerful framework for transformation. Mayim holds multiple certifications, including in nutrition, herbalism, holistic health, and holistic coaching. This blend of scientific rigor and holistic wisdom allows her to offer a unique, interactive approach to health and wellness, helping individuals and entrepreneurs unlock their potential and achieve lasting success. So thank you so much, Mayim. You heard my introduction, my podcast, and it's about this. It's really about transformation, and you are a living example of that. So, Mayim, I'd like you to, perhaps to start telling the listeners about your story and this transformation, which was briefly summed up.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I've had many transformations in life. I think that I would say life is all about transformation and
Mhm.
discovering our purpose, discovering who we really are, who we were meant to be, what we were meant to do on this earth. And I think that, yeah, a lot of times 40 and over, maybe even sooner than that. I mean, I remember when I was, I think, a teenager and just thinking, riding in a car and thinking, is this all there is to life? Is this it? Isn't there more? And I think this is a very important question. I think one mistake that people have when trying to discover their quote unquote purpose is to think that there's only one purpose for them in life. And if, I discovered today that we're both Jewish, which is great. We're also both students of Kabbalah.
Mhm.
And, if we look at Hashem means the name. It's what Jews call God, because when we say Hashem, it refers to the sacred name, the divine name, the tetragrammaton, which is Yod He Vav He. Okay, so I want to say that in case anyone who's listening to us is not Jewish. When I say Hashem, I'm referring to the divine name of God, Yod He Vav He. Okay, when we look at Hashem, when we look at the Creator, He has many roles in the universe. He's not only the Creator; He's also the sustainer of life. In the Bible and the Torah, it calls him a man of war. It calls him a mother. It describes him as a female sometimes, using these terms. Sometimes as a father. Sometimes as a warrior. Sometimes as a husband. So God Himself has many roles, and it's not like only one is His purpose. And so, I think that that's something important that we have to discover, is that even the minute things, our minute responsibilities in life, are part of our purpose. And I think that even includes, our ethnic background. So the first part of my story really is, I come from the Philippines,
Mhm.
and my mother and father and I moved here, and one of my brothers moved here when I was about maybe 4 years old or something like that. And I have a very traditional upbringing. My mother, because I'm a holistic healer, so I want to talk about the holistic ways that my parents raised me. How they raised me.
Mhm.
She cooked very native food. She cooked the kind of food that my ancestors ate, which was a lot of meat and vegetables, and a little bit of rice, to as a filler.
Mhm.
Fresh, very fresh. Sometimes we
Mhm.
would go out, to eat at like a fast food joint or something like that, but it was only as a snack to hold us over for when we got home. And then we would eat our real food, which was the healthy food, the meat, vegetables, rice, and dessert was basically fruit. It was everything all natural. And then as I grew up, you know, we didn't go to the doctor very often, only when it's really, really bad. Um, but usually she would just tell me to rest, drink maybe some hot drinks or some hot soup or something like that. Some oil, some like Asian oils that it would help me breathe better. Different things. Vicks Vapor Rub has some essential oils in
Mhm.
there,
Mhm.
things like that. And I was fairly healthy. I didn't see the doctor much. I didn't have asthma or ADD, or all these things that a lot of people have these days, a lot of children have these days. And I believe that had a lot to do with my upbringing. Also, I spent a lot of time outdoors playing outside. A lot of times children nowadays are inside on the computer, or watching shows or whatever. And then I majored in computer science
Mhm.
in high school, and I thought, oh, this is amazing. I can make something, and then with the power of the internet, it can reach all across the world. And I was like, yes, I'm gonna do this. This is what I want to do in life. So I became a computer scientist, and as while in college, I interned at the NASA Ames Research Center, and then I got hired on after my internship. And around that time, when I was working there, I met my husband, and I also entered into a cult. I call it a cult, but there's a lot of beautiful people in that church. But I basically joined. I don't want to name it because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or anything. But it was basically a Christian cult that promoted um, veganism, and so they taught that if you are really trying to go to heaven, you will stop eating animal food.
Mhm.
And I tried it at first, and I felt really good. I remember when I was working at NASA, after lunch, I would take a nap in my car for like maybe 30 minutes, and then I'd go to work because I just get so tired. And then I remember when I went vegetarian vegan, I got all this energy and I didn't have to take naps anymore. So I was like, wow, this is amazing. Maybe this church is right. Maybe this is good. And so I became vegetarian and vegan. And then I met my husband and we got married. We had a vegetarian wedding, no jewelry because our church didn't allow jewelry, no dancing. Also, the church didn't allow any dancing.
Mhm.
And so we got together, and I got pregnant, and I had my first baby. And I had a lot of friends in that church that homeschooled. And so I went back to work after I gave birth, and then I just felt so empty being away from my baby, and it felt so unnatural. I was like, what animal in nature gives birth to its child and then puts it in daycare for 8 hours and then comes back and takes care of it for the rest of the day. I mean, there's some animals that completely abandon their young, but the animals that stay with their young, they don't do that. They don't put it in the care of strangers that they barely know for a long time. Sometimes it's a tribal thing, like a tribe of lions will raise up their
Yeah.
children,
Yeah.
right? But this was different. This is not my tribe. It was just some people that worked right outside the gate at NASA. It was really nice because I could, breastfeed my baby and things like that. But I just felt empty. And so I said, you know what? It's not good. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to be a stay at home mom. But we were in California and we couldn't afford to not have me work. So I started an online business and I basically did app development and digital marketing for mostly high tech companies, but also some health and wellness companies like doctors and dentists and chiropractors and, acupuncturists, things like that. And then I got really, really sick. I had excruciating migraines and it was so bad that at first I couldn't do my business, like I couldn't focus on the computer, and then it got to the point where I couldn't take care of my children anymore, and then it got to the point where I couldn't sleep anymore. When I couldn't sleep anymore, I thought, you know what, I feel like I'm gonna die. It was just, the pain was so bad, and I took like the Tylenol and Excedrin and whatever people told me, suggested that I take, and it worked in the beginning, but eventually it didn't work anymore, and we didn't have any medical insurance. So I decided to go to the emergency room one day when it was finally, I couldn't take it anymore. And at first, the doctor thought that I had a brain tumor. And so they took a lot of tests and asked me many questions. And then they gave me a CT scan. And then after the CT scan, they said, well, good news, you don't have a brain tumor. But bad news, we have no idea what's wrong with you. You have a bad headache. And here's some strong painkillers as Valium. And so I took the Valium, but it didn't work that much better than the over-the-counter medication. And um and I was just stuck, I was just stuck with the same thing. And I thought, how much money did they spend on this hospital, on the equipment, on all of these doctors and nurses education, and they could offer me no help. And so that's when I decided to take my health and healing into my own hands. And as a computer scientist, I always believe that anything is possible. The question is, how long will it take for me to find the answer? That was really the only question, right? I believe that, you know, as now, how many years later is that? Like 22 years later, it's even more so. Almost anything is possible with AI and all these things that are coming out. Anything is possible. It's just how much are we willing to find that answer? And so I started on my journey to find my own answers. And I studied nutrition and herbalism and holistic health, and I got my certifications. And this is how I found out that, what I was doing in my religion was very wrong. I found out basically that the first clue was that B12 gave me instant relief from my migraines. I said, wow, this is more effective than all the medications that the doctor or the pharmacist ever gave me. B12, so simple, and it's like, how come these doctors and nurses and whatever, they couldn't tell me something so simple like, why don't you try some B12? It doesn't work for everyone. It depends on what's causing your headaches and migraines. But if it's from a B12 deficiency, it could help. How do you know? Try some B12. It's so simple. It's so inexpensive to try and so safe to try. It's very safe to try B12. So that's what I did in the instant relief. So then my question was, why? Why does B12 work? That was my scientific mind working. And I like to talk about science and my scientific mind because, a lot of times when you are in the holistic health and wellness movement, people think, oh, you're just a tree hugger. You just love the earth and you don't follow science and you don't have, logic or reasoning skills. And it's like, no, I'm extremely logical.
Mhm.
um, and so I approached, everything logically. And I said, why? Why does B12 get rid of my migraines? And then I realized that one of the factors was my diet, that a vegan diet is devoid of B12. And I was vegetarian
Oh.
aspiring vegan. And so
Mhm.
I had to start I started incorporating more eggs, dairy, and fish. I couldn't
Mhm.
get myself to eat meat yet, but I did, just some things that I didn't fully give up yet. I just increased that. And then voila, then I didn't have to take B12 anymore. I just ate the eggs and dairy and fish. And it's like,
Mhm.
why couldn't they tell me this, And even Google didn't even tell me this. With Chat GPT now, I would say that if you ask it something, it will give you very generic answers. And you really have to be either a really good investigator or a subject matter expert in your field in order to get Chat GPT or these other generative AI tools to give you good answers instead of generic, shallow, surface level answers. Okay. So
Mhm.
that's a warning for people who want to use ChatGPT as their doctor. It's not going to be, it's going to have the same biases, the same programming that Google does, and Google and chat and these generative AI, they tend to give you things that it deems is acceptable, which is going to be what's the majority, what does the majority say, and what the majority says is usually filled with propaganda and bias because of the big pharmaceutical companies that have so much influence over what's published, what's allowed on mainstream media, even in the search engines and in AI, by the way.
Okay.
So, anyways, so no one's gonna tell me, oh, it's because of your vegan diet. And why was I on a vegan diet? It's because of my church. It was influencing me. It's because of my religious beliefs. And so I had to kind of rebel against the church a little bit, and eat the eggs and dairy and things like that. And it wasn't until I had a second health crisis later where I got hypothyroidism. And in order to heal myself from that, I actually went on a carnivore diet where I ate nothing but mostly meat products, animal products, meat and dairy only for about 2 months. And then I
Mhm.
started incorporating other food, but it was still high animal protein. Um, and even now, I am more, my skin is better, my energy levels are better, my mental clarity is better when I am consuming high amounts of meat and dairy. And so and what helped me with that is when I converted to Judaism, because in Judaism it's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to eat meat, right? Because we're supposed to have joy on Shabbat, so we're supposed to eat fish and meat on Shabbat. And so that really helped me. That really helped me. It helped to free my mind in thinking, that um, I'm not doing anything wrong by eating meat. It's something that, God said to Noah, just as I've given you every green herb, I am now giving you the animals to eat. And the temple system was was centered on animal sacrifices, and the animals were not sacrificed in vain. They became food for the priests and for the worshipers that came to offer their offerings and their sacrifices. And so that played a big part. So I'm a very religious person. That's just, I guess, how I'm wired, how I'm made. And so I always felt like, I need God to lead me in what I should do, whether it's, you know, the I don't regret going to the first church because I met my husband there. I remember even my parents were against me converting to that religion, but my mom said, "You know what? God brought you to that church so that you could meet your husband." And then eventually, he and I both converted to Judaism. He is a Jew. by ancestry. So he has Jewish ancestry. So it was kind of like a return to Judaism for him. His grandmother told them later that that they were Jewish. And then for me, I don't know of any. I do have a Spanish like grandmother, but I don't know that I have any Jewish blood. I'm not sure that I do, but what's important is your faith, from what I've learned, not just your blood. So so I'm a Jew, and it's a big part of my holistic health and healing practice. Um, and I have actually have a book. It's just a first draft, so I haven't published it yet. I have a book called on my website that's available. It's called The Aruka Method: Holistic Health and Healing for the 5 Levels of the Soul. And this is a Kabbalistic understanding of what is a soul. Okay, what is a soul? And in Judaism and Hebrew, in the Bible, there are several words that in English we often interpret these words just simply as soul. There are actually different words in Hebrew for it. We have is it okay if I
Inshallah.
explain to that? Explain
Yeah,
that?
please.
We have the nefesh, which is our animalistic being. It's our bodies. It's and then the animals also, they have this nefesh. They have this level of the soul, and God breathed into our nostrils the breath of life, but he also gives this breath of life to the animals. So this is an animalistic soul level, right? The nefesh. And then the second level, I would say, is the ruach. And I'm not saying it's kind of in order, but not necessarily. I'm not trying to say that it's in order of importance, not completely. But the next level that I talk about in the book is called the ruach, and that's talking about the wind, or the spirit within. It's sometimes translated as wind or breath or spirit, or soul. And this, from my study of Kabbalah, Kabbalistic understanding, this also ties into our emotional health, because we have the spirit, or ruach, of in the Bible. We have the spirit of anger, we have a spirit of joy, we have a spirit of timidity. There's a spirit of courage. So all of these emotions are tied to our ruach, according to the way that this Hebrew word is used in the Bible. And so we have to take care of the health, not only of our nefesh, our physical body, but also our ruach, meaning our emotional health.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we do that? And I believe that part of that is from having good relationships, good relationships with our family, good relationships with our friends, our community, our the people that we work with, our social media friends. I block people who who hurt my ruach.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not good for you, what's the point? I actually even blocked one of my family relatives once, and I didn't feel good at first. And my husband said, block them, because I'm the kind of person where, if someone says something and I strongly disagree with it, I cannot ignore it. Like, I have to say something. And this person on my social media, they were just like constantly saying extremely offensive things, and I was always getting upset. And my husband said, block him. I'm like, but it's your brother. How can I block him? It's your brother. He's like, don't worry, you'll see him on the holidays when he comes over, but just block him on social media. I was like, okay, I'll just go do it. And I was happier, and everyone else in my house was happier because I was happier. That's Emotional health is so important, and it's very much underplayed. I think because not too long ago, doctors and scientists, they would detach and discount the effect of emotions and on physical health. They felt like it was two different things, but it's not. It's the same thing. And like we were discussing earlier, um, personal development and religion, they should be synonymous. Religion shouldn't be about um control and guilt tripping and fear and all that stuff. It really should, a huge part of it should really be about personal development. How do we enrich our souls, our spirits, our nefesh, our ruach, etc., with these holy words, and these holy texts from God. It's the original personal development book. It's more than that, but it's also that's certainly also that. And then next we have the neshama, and this is the level of the soul from my studies, which is the breath of the divine, but also
Mhm.
refers to our spiritual and intellectual essence. And so, the Bible says in Hosea, it says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." And I believe that this knowledge it can refer to spiritual knowledge, knowledge from the Bible or other holy books, but I believe that it encompasses all forms of knowledge, knowledge in health and wellness, knowledge in science, knowledge in history and culture, intelligence on every level. This is our neshama soul level. It needs knowledge. We cannot walk in ignorance. And this is the only way, I believe, also that our society as a whole will evolve. And we find this in ancient Eastern religions, like Buddhist religions and things like that, where there's this enlightenment that humans are supposed to um, get to. We're supposed to arrive at this enlightenment at some point in our lives, but also, as Jews, and I think also Christians and Muslims believe that there will also be a time when humanity as a whole will be enlightened. And in Judaism and Christianity, we refer to it as the Messianic era, the Messianic age. I don't know what it's called in Islam, but I know they have something similar. And the only way that I believe we're going to get to this state is through having a healthy global neshama, meaning being fully informed of many things so that we're not so secluded in our way of thinking that we can't understand other people, other countries, other cultures, other ways, and we can't get along with each other, and we want to get rid of each other instead of living in peace. And so our neshama, having a healthy intellect, making sure that we're not only reading books, but also approaching them um, critically, comparing, doing comparative studies. And not only that, but also I believe coming to the Almighty, the one who knows all things, in prayer and praying about the knowledge that we are receiving and making sure that we're not being deceived into a cult or a cultish way of thinking, some kind of group think that will lead our society, our world, our culture into a dark place, into a dark age again, but instead bring us closer into light. And of course, it starts on an individual level, but I believe humanity's destiny is that we must all improve the our health in our neshama level, in our intellectual level.
Mhm.
And I think part of the problem, from a health and wellness perspective now, part of the problems, um, of course, it's a lot of our political leaders. Oftentimes, the power corrupts, and when they step into power, they may mean to do well in the beginning, but sometimes the power and the wealth that comes along with it corrupts. And from a health and wellness perspective, we have one organization which I would like to call out, which is the World Health Organization, which is supposed to, on a global level, set policies that are for our benefit, and they have done that at times, but also at times they have set policies that were not for our benefit, that were set in conjunction with wealthy people who, under the guise of charitable organizations such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and other corrupt organizations like that, who have been responsible for things like promoting things that are not congruent with creation, not congruent with nature, meaning things like GMOs, things like forcing experimental drugs on people, force injections, things like that. forcing GMO crops and things like that onto third world countries' food supplies so that they are dependent on corporations instead of just depending on what God has given us through nature, the seed, the plain seed. A healthy crop is stronger than a GMO crop naturally. I remember I visited a farm once when I lived in California. I visited an organic farm, and the farmer was telling us a story. He was saying that him and his brother they grew up in a farming family. He decided to, when he grew up and started his own farm, he decided to go organic, and his brother decided to do the Monsanto, all the GMO and pesticides. He decided to go that route. And what he saw was that his brother, with his organic farm, actually produced more and a healthier crop than and at a better rate than his brother, who was doing everything through the pesticides and through the GMO. And so his brother is starting to slowly transition into organic farming. I don't think he is organic labeled, so he doesn't have the official organic label that is here in America, because that's expensive, but his farming practices are organic, and he doesn't rely on the GMO seeds and the commercial corporate pesticides. He relies on natural things, and his crops are not only stronger and healthier, but they're also more nutritious. And that's just a fact. There's been a lot of research that's done on that. So, anyways, if I could go back to the next level of the soul that I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to talk about, which is the chaya or chaya, and I believe that this ties to a life of purpose. So it talks about our life force, what gives us energy, and the animals have this too. Animals are called hayot, which is related to that word. But animals, when they live their lives, they instinctually fulfill their life's purpose. They don't have to think about it, right? They don't have to wonder, what is my purpose? They know their purpose. Their purpose is to um, survive, number one, to protect their children, number two, um, you know, things like that, maybe protect their tribe. And they also, maybe even without knowing, they also protect their environment as they are doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think as humans, sometimes our flaw is we are too intelligent. We are so intelligent, and you know, we think that what is simple and what we were meant to do on this earth is so unimportant and insignificant that we look for deeper meaning and purpose, and we don't see the purpose that is already there right in front of us. So um you know as a mother, I always try to put my children first. And as a Jew, as a religious Jew, my marriage is also very sacred to me. So all of my decisions have to honor, my children, my husband, and also my faith. And I think this aspect of my religion helps give me purpose and helps me decipher what is my purpose in the world, because I have a framework that I work within. I don't have to look for my purpose everywhere. I know my purpose is within this framework of honoring God, my husband, and my children. So it's easier to find my purpose because I have a smaller, like I have more hints of where my purpose lies. And so for me, because when I was young, I realized I was given this gift of logic and a very engineering mind, a very computer science oriented mind. I was not only interested in it, but I was very capable of it. So I knew, like, this is my gift. I was blessed with these skills. This is part of my purpose. My computer science skills are part of my purpose. And then later, when I got into my health crisis, and then I was able to overcome my health crisis without the help of doctors and all these things. And it didn't happen just once, it happened multiple times. then I said, well, I have this valuable knowledge now that wasn't necessarily gifted with this knowledge from birth or anything like my computer science knowledge. It was something that God gave me later in my life, but it is still a blessing. It is still a gift. And because now I have received this knowledge from God and I have a great passion for it, and because I see a great lack in this world of this knowledge, I said, yes, this also must be part of my purpose, is to
Mhm.
bring this knowledge to others and help others find their healing path in this world. And so I didn't think, oh, well, my earlier years as a computer scientist, those were wasted. No, they all work together because now I can bring my health and wellness knowledge and my computer science skills to deliver this knowledge in a way that maybe someone who, went to medical school, they can't do the exact same thing that I do. There's a purpose for everything. There's a purpose for medical doctors. I'm not saying that, you know, they're useless. Of course not. But what I'm saying is that there's also a purpose for holistic healers, and there's also if you have many talents, perhaps there's a way that you can integrate them, and perhaps that you were called, as the book of Esther says, for such a time as this. Now that you have all this life experience, you can combine them into something wonderful that can heal the world. And also, by the way, there's one more level of the soul, according to the Kabbalistic understanding. This is Yechida, and this is oneness with God. And this is a big theme in Judaism, to be one with God, to make his name one, to unify God in this world, so that there aren't multiple ideas of God in this world, but only one, the one that he revealed to us. And I think that this has to also be a part of holistic health and wellness. And I also believe that this is something that our souls will search for, and that our souls will be sick for. We have this song that we sing on Shabbat, Yedid Nefesh, lover of my soul. And it says, my soul is sick because it wants the divine. It's seeking for the divine. And I do believe that having a connection with the divine is an important part of healing. It's an important part of recovering from addiction. And it's also an important part of a lot of people's um, discovery in their purpose in life, healing their marriage, healing their relationships, um, you know, divine help and becoming one with the divine. It's a very important part. So it's the 5 levels of the soul.
Thank you so much, Mayim. This is, this is absolutely, fascinating, this. And, you talk about purpose of life, and, I'm a coach as well. I'm a life coach, and I was for 35 years in international sales development. I ran companies, and, but something was missing, I mean, I liked I always liked developing, relationships with my customers, and making things feel good, and developing business, but always on a very kind of, trusting base, and respectful base. But sometimes I was not aligned with the companies I was working with, and because I thought, I really, the notion of win-win, a lot of people mention the word, but for me, it's like it's normal. I mean, it is something. It's not it's not how do you say, a book, a concept. It's, it should be there. And I listened to coaches talking. It was during the pandemic, and I realized actually that I had been coaching people all my life without putting a label on that. It's really about helping people, getting the best out of themselves, and and really thrive, empower people, you see. And one thing I'm just going to mention, it's so fascinating because everything's kind of coming together. In Kabbalah, I mean, yesterday, so I attended a new moon event. It's the new moon of Cancer, and this was in London. And it was fascinating, listening to, there was an astrologer, and her husband, had a very powerful meditation and explained a lot of things. And see what you were mentioning before, Mayim, it's, wanting the good, wanting to bring the good to this world, wanting, doing the best, and even at the soul level, our mission on this planet, when we is really to elevate our soul as well. I mean, basically to bring the best we can. This is the only thing which matters. And when everybody does this on a collective level, this is really how you get a better place. So it's funny that this was there for, it's been there for millenniums. So now when you know I remember when I started, my kind of awakening, or spiritual awakening, a lot of things was new. And I listened to Dr. Joe Dispenza, for instance. And again, this is very interesting because there's a combination of science as well, quantum physics, but a lot of spirituality. And I go, oh, it's interesting. But now I realize that all this, when people talk about, energy and vibrations, this was always there. I mean, in Kabbalah, and it was there. So everything is coming together, and apparently now we are this year is a big year of transformation, a very big one, 2025 at all levels. Again, what's your take on this, Mime, for instance? I mean, astrology. I mean, I don't know if you versed a little bit into that or not, like, and because obviously you are a scientist, right? And and as well, but now there's this other level. How does it resonate with you? When you listen to, for instance, Kabbalistic astrologers, if I may ask.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting. So, yeah, we are also in the Jewish calendar, we're also celebrating a new moon. It is the month of Tammuz. And so
Yeah, this.
the um the signs of the zodiac, the constellations of the zodiac are mentioned in the Bible, and it says, God in the Bible, God says, I'm the one who created all of these things. And I have a friend who is, when I was working at NASA, actually, I had a friend there who is a Chinese PhD, brilliant, woman. And she was a Christian. She was a devout Christian. And she used to talk about the Chinese astrology. So they have, the year of the dragon, year of the, different things, right?
Yeah.
And at that time, I was like, wow, that's so interesting. How can you be a PhD and a Christian, and yet you think about these astrological signs? And then she said to me, well, you know what? It's just statistics. And I said, oh, that's so interesting. That's a very interesting way to look at it. So basically, what she was saying, and I think that's a rational way to look at it. It could be. Now, of course, there is fake astrology, people who are just trying to make money and
Of
whatever,
course.
right?
Mhm.
There's always that, right? But there's also this idea that historically and statistically, people born in a certain time frame will tend to have certain characteristics, right? For example, or a certain time of month will breed certain type of activity in humanity. And
Mhm.
that is measurable, that is observable, that is that, if you're actually looking at historical data, it's not witchcraft, it's just statistics, it's sociology, it's something you could approach it in very many ways. So it depends on, I think, the way that you're approaching it. Now, there is there's a saying, though, in Judaism. I think the Hebrew phrase is Ein Mazal Yisrael. And that means that Mazal, when we say that word Mazal, means like Mazal Tov. What Mazal actually means constellation. So when we
Mhm.
say Mazal Tov, we're actually saying you have a good constellation. It's like we're saying the stars have aligned in your favor today.
Mhm.
And that's why it is your bar mitzvah today. Or that is why you are married today. Or that is why you just had a baby today. Because Mazal Tov, you've had a good constellation has come upon you. It means that the heavens have aligned to your favor. Now, some people think, oh, that's superstition, but is it? Because doesn't, from a religious perspective, doesn't God control the heavens and where the stars are? And doesn't he control the seasons and the times? And isn't this specific time the time that he appointed for this special event to happen in your life? And the stars were aligned in a very specific way. It was a very specific time of the month. And we have this idea in Judaism of auspicious times. And certain times are appropriate for mourning, and certain times are appropriate for joy and festivity and things like that. And the reason why we know that this time is appropriate for that is because we look at Jewish history, and we look at, all these tragedies happen on this specific month. This must be, we better watch out on this month, right? So in a general sense, I do believe that that's true, but there's also another way to look at it, though, and that comes with the saying in Judaism, Ein Mazal Israel, which means there is no constellation for Israel. And that seems like it could contradict everything that I just said, but what that means to say is, yes, there are statistics, but we can always rise above them. Yes, we have certain DNA, but we can even reprogram our DNA. Yes, we're born into a certain family, into a certain societal, status with certain economic background. And if we stay in our situation and if we allow circumstances to dictate our life, then yes, we are destined to a certain fate, just like the stars say. But if you can rise higher, and if you can connect to the breath, the origin of the breath of life, the origin of your neshama, your ruach, the source of your chaya, the source of your nefesh, you can connect to that divine source, then there is no constellation that can have power over your life. You can actually rise above it. And I believe that that's why, in Judaism, in the Torah, it says, do not go to, don't go to soothsayers and, these types of things, because not to say that what they're saying isn't true, but we have something higher that can rise above those things.
This is fascinating, yeah. And you see, before you were saying, about, like everything which happened in, your life, and perhaps the teachings we are getting from that. Because one thing which struck me with Kabbalah is really this notion is that everything happens for a reason. There are no coincidences. So everything is a teaching. And actually, instead of thinking, why does it happen to me? It's really okay. What does it mean for me? What can I learn? What can I do? And when we look at this, I mean, each area we study, and okay, this was there, and very often, even if we think at the time that it's terrible thing happening, afterwards we realize that there's a bigger plan there. And this, when we overcome these obstacles, all of a sudden, universe opens up to other possibilities. And so it's really about embracing challenges. Life happens, but what's the difference between people is, what do we make of that? How do we look at this? And then, I mean, it's like you mentioned, for diseases like cancer. There have been numerous studies saying that people with the same condition, I mean, medical condition can have it can have very different outcomes depending on the mindset. If we think, oh, I'm finished, it's terrible, this is over, I can't do, yeah, well, it's going to go down because we influence as well our mind with our words, our vibrations. Now, if we take another approach, okay, this is it, there's a fact, right? I've got to deal with this. How best can I deal with it with with a fighting spirit? And then what I would call miracles happen. It's like because we influence, I mean, the body is made, is it 70% water? I'm not sure if I have the figure or if it's 80% or something like that. But we influence ourselves, huh, with our words, our thoughts, our emotions. So it's fascinating this, yeah.
Yeah, I do love that's one of my favorite teachings. Yes, that everything is happening for a reason and ultimately it's for our good. Even if it's painful and miserable and traumatic at the time, there's a very important lesson for us to learn, and also it may fuel us to helping others so that they don't have to face the same um rough trial.
Yeah, and absolutely. And you see, when you were explaining before about, obviously, yes, we have a faith, but one word came to mind right away for me, it's free will.
Hmm.
That we might be on a path and, the Creator has a path for us, but we always have a free will. We can go one direction or the other. And depending on this can change a lot of things. And, I'm going to share something. Things happened in my past, many, many years ago, which I thought were unbelievable coincidences. I kind of brushed them off, in a way, because I came from this environment where it was just, what is proven by science, the rest is not there. But when I look now, when I just think about these events, I know that, I can see the reason I could have made different choices in my life. Okay, I choose something else, but this happened really for a reason, it just, and it brings a lot of humility. And what I would say is, what it brought me as well is a lot of more certainty now with my current journey that I'm here for as well to accomplish a mission. I mean, like you, at my humble level, to help as many people as possible, live the best life possible, making people understand that change is all possible at any time of life. But of course, for that, you must be willing to do that, and to get out of your comfort zone. But it's as well very important to support you, to get the right level of support, because we cannot do things on our own. We don't see our blind spots. So sometimes we need to have people who can help us navigate this journey.
Yes, absolutely. It was through coaching, life coaching and marriage coaching that really helped me with my second health crisis, which was battling with hypothyroidism, because most serious health issues, the root is not just physical, but also um, spiritual, emotional, relational, the stresses in life. And I just found that coaching, especially for me, because when I've seen like therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors in the past, and for me, I always felt like there's always this thing like, oh, are they going to try to push medication on me? Because I don't want medication. I don't want to escape from my pain. I want to seize it. I want to conquer it. I want to overcome it. I want to use it. I want to feel it so that it can give me the lesson that I need. And it's usually coaches that help you do that, because like a coach, if you think of the word coach, usually people think of like a sports coach, right? The coach is there to help you win the game, right? He's not going to play the game for you, and he's not going to give you some like magic pill so that you can miraculously win the game. No, it's going to be through your own effort and strategy and a little bit of, um the constellations aligning, because of Hashem, because of God making things go your favor, but you still have has a lot to do with you, and the coaches are that to help you through that. And I was thinking, you were saying in your podcast introduction that for you're specifically addressing people over 40, and I was thinking, oh, that's very interesting, because in the temple, um once a priest would reach 40 years old, they stopped being a normal worker in the temple and they became an advisor of the people who worked at the temple. So I thought that's a if you're 40 or over and you feel like, I think I want something more. I know a lot of us at this age that they do become coaches because we're like, we have a lot of knowledge to offer in this world more than just, what our previous jobs was allowing us to give to this world. And so we become coaches. And yeah, I found a lot of healing through that, a lot of wisdom and knowledge through coaches. Like, for example, the marriage coaches that we went to, they're not licensed therapists or anything like that, but they um, were not only more affordable than a licensed marriage counselor, but they were also just more compassionate. And because they weren't focused on our past, they were more focused on giving us tools to have a better future. I felt like it was much more effective in helping our marriage to heal than just like therapy or something like that. Because therapy always assumes there's something wrong with you, there's something broken, you know, but coaching assumes you are a star, and you are meant to do great things. You just need some help, you just need a coach to help you get there. So I think coaching is awesome.
Absolutely. And, as you say, you know, I mean, roughly just when people ask, what's the difference between a coach and a therapist? I mean, for me, a coach takes you where you are today and brings you where you want to go, with your goals, right? It's like, it's okay. Now, therapist takes you as well from where you are today, but comes back, to the past and trying to, to help you healing your, how do you say, yeah, perhaps your trauma. So still, even as coaches, you know, w- we we are not therapists, of course, but we tried to help as well our coaches with understanding where do their behaviors come from? Where, because you see, there's this element that most, I mean, the way our brain operates is that it's very much shaped in the first 7 years of our life, where basically we take everything without filter. We operate in a theta, brainwave, and this a lot, and a lot of the disease we encounter afterwards have as well often to do with some kind of unhealed trauma. And going into this is really something which is so important, and sometimes you were mentioning a word which is emotions. And I heard that actually every disease, every conditions we have is linked to an emotion, every single one. If I'm, and I know some, energy healers and emotional, medicine, and it's very interesting, that when we manage to really find the cause of that, when we manage to heal our inner child, when we do this work within ourselves, all of a sudden, things really, we really can heal. Does this resonate with you, my?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. That's why, in my book I talk about the 5 levels of healing. And medical professionals, they usually just focus on that first level, which is important, but we're more than just our physical bodies, obviously.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, and I think we could we certainly have others because it's, and so what would be like a word of wisdom, of a tip or an advice, for our listeners before we conclude today?
Yes, just that, again, healing, it should be holistic, and it should involve not only your physical body but also your emotional healing, um, your intellectual wellness, empowering yourself with knowledge, also finding purpose in your life, and also connecting with the creator, with the divine, with the almighty. I think these are the 5 steps to true and complete holistic health and wellness.
Beautiful, beautiful, Mayim. And so when our listeners want to connect with you, what's the best way? I mean,
Um,
your
well,
website?
maybe I don't know. There's my website, and then you can download my book that I was talking about, and that will get you on my email list, and then I'll email you with the latest. I'm also on YouTube. You go to youtube.com/Arukah, Arukah, and
Mhm.
yeah,
As it's written here, okay?
yes.
Aruka, yes. Okay, and anyway, you know, all your contacts will be, and the YouTube. So I really want to thank you very much, Mayim. I mean, this was such a wonderful conversation, and to our listeners, as you can see, there's a lot to take from today's conversation. And remember, change is always possible. And really, my tip is follow your dreams. If there's something you really want to do and it's been there, and even you like doing as a child, go for it. It's never too late, because when we talk about finding our purpose, very often purpose is linked as well to some of the passions we have. So, and let it go out. And when you do that, and the tip is as well, if there's anything you want to do, take a first step today, tiny step, and when you start doing this, the the universe has your back. And a lot of things are going to unfold. So thank you very much for our listeners to be here, to being here, and I wish you all a very good time. Bye bye.